You're listening to the Just Japan podcast. Everything you want to know about Japan.
Well, hey there, folks, and welcome to episode number 216 of the Just Japan podcast. My name is Kevin O'Shea, and I'm a Canadian who has been living in Asia for a very long time. And in each episode of the Just Japan podcast, I highlight folks who are doing really cool things in Japan, a place that I called home for many, many years. And this week, another great interview, a first-time guest. I had the chance to sit down with Gregorio, the person behind Monsta Sweets, the delicious cookie shop that is now opening up in Tokyo. I've been following his journey in coming to Japan since 2008. He's done a lot of very interesting things in between. And now he's an entrepreneur. And he set up his cookie business, his amazing cookie business. Started with pop-ups, and now he has his own brick-and-mortar shop in Koenji in Tokyo. And in this episode of the podcast, Gregorio shares his amazing story of entrepreneurship, starting up a business. And for any of you out there listening who may be interested in the future and setting up your own business wherever it may be, this episode is some great inspiration from you. It's always neat to find people who are in Japan following lots of very different paths. And I think that's one of the great things about the Just Japan podcast is that the folks I'm talking to do so many amazing things. And at the end of the episode, of course, I will share all of his details, where to follow him online, because you got to follow Monsta Sweets and see all the delicious things they're doing. So if you get a chance to if you're not already in Tokyo, if you ever get a chance to visit Japan and Tokyo, you got to hit them up and get some of those amazing cookies. So sit back and enjoy my wonderful chat with Gregorio from Monsta Sweets. All right, guys, we're back again with another episode of the Just Japan podcast, and I'm very happy to have first-time guest on the show, Gregorio. Gregorio, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And just before we hit record, we were just chatting about how we've, I've been following you and your journey to Japan since 2008, maybe even before, around 2008.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the Just Japan podcast was I was doing it for years, and a lot of great people I never had a chance to chat to, but now that I've rebooted it, it's great to have you on. And your story has evolved so much since those early days.
Awesome. I think I've lived 3 lifetimes here now.
Oh, really? Wow. Cool. So I'm wondering if you could just let the guests know a little bit about yourself, and maybe, as I like to often ask guests, if you can tell us about your Japan origin story and how you ended up in Japan.
Okay. So Japan origin story, long-winded, but let me try to abbreviate it. Back in 2007, my partner wanted to come to Japan and teach English, and I wanted to come to Japan too, because it was one of those things, of course, I always wanted to at least visit. But the thing is, back when I was graduating high school, I started working as a graphic designer, and I was only doing university part-time. And then eventually I got to a position where I was an art director, and I dropped out of uni. So I was like, I'm at the position I want to be at. Why do I need university? Mm-hmm. Fast forward, my partner was finishing university and wanted to come to Japan and teach English after that. But then I couldn't come because I didn't have a degree. So in order for me to come at the same time, I had to find another alternative, which was going back to university. So I went back to the local community college, got some more credits, and then was able to apply and transfer to Temple University, Japan. So Temple University is a Philadelphia-based American university, and they had a Tokyo campus. Okay. And so I applied to that, and eventually I got accepted and headed my way here at the end of 2008, starting in the 2009 semester at Temple University.
Wow. Very cool. So, I mean, it's interesting. I can remember back in the day, I mean, I arrived in Japan in 2008, and, we were just saying how we were both part of the kind of second wave of J vloggers, Japan content creators on YouTube. And, those first ones, for example, I think of Tokyo Kuni, Roger Swan, and, a lot of people, not a lot of people, there were definitely some people who were creating content that at that time who were also Temple University students, I think.
Well, some of those were actually my fault.
Oh, okay.
So in the dormitory, so there was this one guy, DC, and he ended up making a
Betamax, right?
He lived right door. Yeah, Betamax DC. He lived next door to me in the dorms, and he found I was doing these YouTube videos, and then he started doing that, and he actually got pretty popular before he just like he just disappeared.
Yeah.
And then also Radley started doing videos. He had this channel Tokyo Bananas and something else, another channel. And so at least those two. And then there was a lot of people who also just, when I got to the school, and also at the time, my handle was Atomic Boy X, because that was my old handle from a million years ago. So I'd be walking in the school and people were like, Atomic Boy. And they're like, I watch your video. And they helped me get here and stuff like that. So it was like many times that happened.
Okay. That's neat. It was neat in those days, I have to admit. I mean, it's, I think back 2008, 9, I mean, when if you had 5,000 followers, you were a big deal. And I can remember, like walking down the streets in Kobe where I lived on weekends, or like 2010, and just people waving to me like, hey, Busan Kevin. I'm like, yeah, that's so cool. Yeah. And not a penny did we make.
Nope.
No, Now, I wanted to talk to you this evening all about this really amazing endeavor, this project I've been following you doing on social media for some time, and I haven't been able to go to Tokyo to eat some of the delicious things I see. But let's talk about Monsta Sweets. And so let's start at the beginning of that. How the heck did this all happen? You've gone from, and what if I'm not even sure what you were doing before that, but I mean, it's been quite a neat story. And I love the entrepreneurial stories of people who came to Japan doing one thing and transitioning to another. So tell us about the origin of Monsta Sweets.
Okay, well, so going back to from America, I was working as a graphic designer for decades already, basically. When I came to Japan, I started a part-time job as English teaching, which is the easiest thing to do, especially as a student. Yeah. And after I finished university, trying to find, originally I was going to go back to America, but then I decided to stay when I finished university. So when I tried finding a job in my field of graphic design, it was really difficult because since I always had planned to go back to America, I didn't focus as much on the language. And also when you're teaching English, you're discouraged from speaking any Japanese with the students. Yeah. So it was difficult for me to find a job as a graphic designer. So for a while I did English teaching. Eventually I had somebody I knew who had a hookup to get me a job at a game company doing graphic design. Okay. And I ended up there for like 4 years, but it ended up being like a black kigyo. So really bad company.
Oh, okay.
And then I did another graphic design job at another game company, but it wasn't a Japanese company. It was one that was based in Israel. And that one was a really good paying job. And it was really good people. I liked my job there. And then in the pandemic, May of 2020, they decided just to close down the Japan office.
Oh.
So it was like, oh, okay. And so I had applied for permanent residency, but I hadn't received it. And so my visa, I needed to make sure my visa was still good. So then I ended up at this other job, which was a medical software company, and I was going to do like their design stuff and promos and all their catalog sheets and videography and stuff. And during that time, during the pandemic, hadn't seen anybody, didn't meet up with anybody for like a year.
Wow.
And so from Twitter, the Twitter.chi, they wanted to have like a meetup or a tweet up. So we ended up meeting up at a park, and there's one person that I'm friends with. And the first thing she asked was, do you have any business ideas? And I'm like, I have 1,000,001 business ideas. And one of them that I've always wanted to do is the plus size clothing shop, because plus size clothes is still, even though I've been in Japan 15 years, you still can't find plus size clothes easily. The other idea, which is something that was seen as the global trend, was going to be, the next global trend was going to be cookies. And so I was like, I think cookies is also another thing. And so this person who wanted to start the business, I started doing the research for her. So I was trying to find the logistics and everything about trying to procure all the type of clothes, whether it's domestic or from internationally ordering. And then also I started to figure out the cookie concept. So I ended up making Monsta Sweets, because I was the trend of the cookies was supposed to be these big jumbo chunky cookies. And in Japan, usually most cookies are small and crunchy. So I was trying to do these more American style chewy cookies.
Yeah.
And so I started recipe testing and having people try them out. And the logo the logo I made was just basically a placeholder logo.
Okay.
And so when I then was going to present both the cookie idea and the clothing shop idea, we're pretty much going to go with the cookie idea, because at the time of the pandemic, the shipping was all crazy. You couldn't get things in a timely manner.
It's a mess, right?
Yeah, the supply chain was so super broken. So trying to get stock from outside Japan was going to be really, really, really tough at that time. And so the best thing to do was be able to make cookies, because pretty much, you can get all that domestically. Or at least there was enough stock domestically that, that you can start it up.
Yeah.
But then she suddenly had some medical issues and decided that she wanted to go forward. She did not want to go forward with the business, because she needed to focus on her health. And at that time, I was like, well, I just put all this effort and did all this recipe testing and made a concept and everything. And I said, well, why don't I try it out? And I started doing kind of like under the table mail orders to people in Japan. Because the one thing in Japan is you can't start an at-home bakery compared to like many other countries. Like, for example, America has cottage food laws where you can start an at-home bakery. And I know many other countries have that, but Japan does not have that. So then for me to want to go on to do something else, get it bigger, I had to find somewhere else to bake so I can do it a little more officially. But that's the general gist of how, it all started. It was kind of by accident and kind of as a hobby.
Yeah. So I'm curious, during the pandemic, we hear lots of things about people got into a lot of different, obviously, hobbies when they were during their lockdowns. Sourdough bread was a huge thing.
Yes.
A lot of people got into a lot of different, cooking hobbies, sewing, Gardening was a huge one. It got to the point now where it's actually during the pandemic, it was hard. People couldn't get seeds, couldn't get their hands on seeds because people were pandemic gardening, which are all fantastic things to get into. So I'm curious, like, so you weren't into baking at all before this. So this was all like a new thing. So when you talk about like recipe testing, was it just like, was your apartment a big old mess and you were just like baking cookies all the time?
Yeah, because I'm from America, and you can buy like the box mix where you just add eggs and oil and whatever. So I would do that, and I'd put my additions in there and customize it myself. But as a from scratch baker, I was not a from scratch baker. For cooking, I think I'm a decent cook. I can make decent food from scratch. But for baking, it was all new. Okay. And the fact that, cooking, you can kind of, experiment and throw things in there. But with baking, it's more of a science. You have to have, the exact grams for certain things. Otherwise, the whole thing might just turn into a big pile of like goo when you try to bake it.
Very mathematical. Which is actually, this reminds me of one of the things we teach the kids at school. Like there's I'm lucky enough to have a food tech, the food tech class, the food technology class is right next to mine. I'm a primary school teacher. And often my class smells amazing, but I love listening to the food tech teacher, and she'll be out there with my kids. My students are like in grade 2, and she's teaching them how to make cookies or something. And I can hear just like, this is math. This is all math, everyone. Addition and then, and subtraction, and I'm like fractions, So one thing I've as I follow the journey on Instagram with Monsta Sweets and on Twitter and all the things that you're doing leading up to opening your brick and mortar shop. You've been doing pop-ups for a long time, so I'm just curious, how does that happen? How does one go about kind of organizing a pop-up, connecting, making that network? Because you're doing these, where are the different places that you were doing pop-ups at? A bunch of questions there.
The majority of them are in Koenji. So I live in Koenji, and also I think the demographic for this that I was trying to do is best for Koenji. Of course, like places like Harajuku or Shibuya would probably also be good places because that's where people would probably be buying this type of thing. But getting any type of location there is just going to be insanely expensive.
Okay.
And even just for finding a pop-up location, so many places is really expensive for renting out the day or by the hour. You might be paying like $100-$200 to rent out the space.
Oh, really?
And it's like, so luckily I found a couple places that they're kind of off the grid of the regular like shop, like where you can rent like a website to show like pop-up space rentals.
Okay.
And the place that I did the majority was it was actually a hostel.
Okay.
And the first floor is a bar. And during the daytime, they would have it available to rent out for whatever you want to use it for 2,000 yen an hour.
Oh, okay.
So I would rent that out for a few hours on like a Saturday or Sunday. And that's how that started.
I'm wondering, do a lot of like, so like my sister-in-law is in Osaka, and she owns a kind of a floral shop and a design shop, which she just recently opened I think like 2 years ago. But before that, she was like kind of doing pop-ups a lot. And I don't know a lot of details, but I know that like it seemed that there was kind of a network of kind of friends and stuff and different people she knew who owned like little cafes or little like mochi shops, bakeries, and they kind of all helped each other out and kind of scratched each other's backs. And so maybe she would kind of like do like a pop-up kind of thing at like one of these shops, and then different people would, they would kind of move around. Is that something that you were involved in as well? Like, did you know like a network of people maybe own coffee shops or different cafes and you would set up there sometimes?
So at the beginning, I didn't know anybody.
Okay.
Like as you know, so people who live a long time in Japan, foreigners, it's a revolving door of people that you know. So many people come and go. And then for the locals, I hadn't, for the cafes, and I usually don't really go out to cafes because I'm just somebody who I don't want to. You can say I'm kind of a cheapskate. I don't want to spend like 600-700 yen for a coffee, so I just usually didn't go to these cafes. But when I started doing this, and then I started talking with people, then I did start getting to know more people. And some of the bakeries and stuff that like the cake shops and stuff that I used to go to as just a customer, now, like when I went there again as a customer, they're like, "Oh, I bought your cookies from the last time you did a little pop up, and they were delicious." And so now kind of started making friends with other cafe shops and stuff from that. So now I have kind of network, but at the beginning, I knew absolutely nobody.
Gotcha. So it's hard to break into something like that, I assume too, and then. I don't know. Maybe in like the more trendy neighborhoods, even with cafes and things, maybe it's a bit of a revolving door. Shops come and go, possibly. I don't know. So, and you're in Koenji now. I don't know Tokyo very well at all. And I remember I was just before I interviewed or called you up and we started this interview. I was showing my wife Instagram for Monsta Sweets, and she was like, "Oh, Koenji." She was like, "That would be a good neighborhood." I was like, "Okay, so you know what this place is." So is it kind of a trendy neighborhood, kind of a hip neighborhood?
Yeah. So Koenji it's one of the biggest like secondhand clothing shop areas.
Okay.
And also it has a ton of coffee shops.
All right.
There's a lot of Showa era coffee shops, and there's also a ton of like modern coffee shops.
Okay, cool. So that's the kind of neighborhood you want to be in. Neat. So, a lot of big things have been happening recently, and let's talk about the transition from doing the pop-ups to going a step or two bigger and opening up your own shop. So, how did that happen?
Well, because again, so the whole thing about having a place to bake is the most difficult thing.
Oh, okay.
So I had started off with one place, and I was able to use that for a year. But the thing is, the person who let me use their space, originally their wife said no for me to use the space because it's under the wife's name, technically.
Okay.
But then it was about a year into it that somehow, because the one thing is on when you're selling it at like a pop-up, you must have it labeled with the ingredients. You have to put like an expiration date sticker, and you also have to show where it was made at, like somewhere that was an official, like this is a place that's designated like for baking.
Okay.
And so I needed that address basically. I needed that place, that address to show. So, there are people who get away with just selling, made at home things, and they kind of sell it, they go under the radar, but I'm a foreigner. I don't want to get in trouble. So I'm trying to go by all the rules,
Yeah.
Got the hygiene license also. It's called the Shokohin Eisei something. And that's like the food hygiene license. Sat in a half a day seminar of them just reading the book to us, and then they gave us this 3-question quiz, and even if you got it right or wrong, you still got your little license at the end.
Okay.
So I had that, made sure I had that before I even started anything. But then after I lost that first location to bake at, it took about a month and a half for me to find another one.
Okay.
And even then, it's just trying to bring things there and bring things back. It's just too much, and you're limited on how much you can bake and everything. So if I was going to take this the to the next level, I needed my own space.
Yeah.
So
So you need
that's how I.
so you need your own space. And I saw back, I mean, a few months back, or maybe more than a few months back, when you announced that you were doing a crowdfunding campaign. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's people out there. Like, one thing with me, I mean, I'm no longer in Japan, but I do intend on returning to Japan. I intend on like buying a
Hmm.
home there and retiring, probably somewhere kind of a little more countryside in the Kansai area. But as I learned years ago that I can make more money teaching internationally abroad than abroad.
Hmm.
I mean, outside of Japan than inside Japan.
Hmm.
But I mean, I guess I have a bit of the entrepreneurial bug. I obviously I won't be teaching little kids forever, and I do want to kind of like, settle down in Japan. And so I always think like, what will I do in the future? And maybe it's not baking cookies, but I love hearing the stories of people who are starting businesses. So I was wondering if you could tell us about kind of a little bit about, maybe the crowdfunding and how you found the location and kind of moving into that location and getting it set up.
Hmm. Well, the crowdfunding, it wasn't very successful.
Oh, okay.
Um,
I didn't know
it
that.
wasn't. You would think so. I was very disappointed in the people that I know, because you can say there is a lot of people from when I was younger that I supported, both financially, mentally, physically. Like, I sheltered some of them who didn't have places to stay, and now a lot there's people, and they're making good money. You can see they're making good money. And I launched the crowdfunding. So I did a GoFundMe for outside Japan, and I did a crowdfunding inside Japan for under the Campfire crowdfunding for Japan. And I reached out to all my quote unquote friends, and a lot of them are like, oh, I'll check it out. And I actually had people who knew me the least are actually the ones who gave me the most.
Interesting.
And then, like, the people who I'm really close with, or people who I know who I was close with, and they also I know have making good money, didn't see a cent from them. So I was very surprised that you see people when they have their birthday and they ask you to donate to some little organization on Facebook, and you see that they raise like $500 or $1,000, and then me, I'm like, you couldn't even give me $20. So I was really disappointed in that from who I thought were my friends.
Mm-hmm.
And then inside Japan also, it wasn't very successful. I did get like 22 people who donated. I got maybe in total, maybe $4,500.
Okay.
But I was looking towards more like hoping to raise like about $20,000. So
it's interesting how that kind of thing. It's interesting how that kind of like, I'm thinking back to years ago, just something that happened to me back when I was living in Japan, and I was in Kobe, and I'd met some foreigners who had had success starting their own English schools and were doing quite well financially, and they worked crazy hard, but they were really doing well, and it showed that they financially they were doing well. So I was teaching at a small international school, but part of me was thinking like, what would it be like to own my own business? And my wife at the time, my wife, we had like one baby at the time actually, and a lot of her mama tomo friends, so many of them said like, oh. Actually, no, my son was actually a few years old at that point, maybe 3 or 4. And so many of her friends were like, oh, if your husband ever taught English or ever opened a school, we'd definitely go there. And she was telling her friends about how like I was thinking of opening a school. And so many of them were like, oh, we'll definitely go. We'll put our kids in it. We'll put our kids. And then, we'd talk about this, and we wrote down names and numbers of how many people. And we had about 30 or 40 moms in the area where we were living that were saying that they would happily send their kids to my classes. So I rented a space on the weekends, and it was a lot of money to rent a space, just like a classroom for a couple of days a week. And I did all the advertising and graphics, and I set this place up. And I rented it for 6 months, and I started doing my English classes. And you know what? All those moms that promised they were going to come, none of them did. And I remember how pissed off my wife was. She was so pissed. She was like, oh, and so we had made projections and estimates and how much we might make and this and that and the rent, and it ended up. I mean, I think I just broke even. I think after 6 months of hard work and stuffing flyers in mailboxes and doing little promotions, I made enough to pay the rent, and then that was it. After 6 months, I'm like, nah,
Yeah.
like I'm done here. But it was just reminding me of that, because there was a lot of people that promised us the sun and the moon and the stars, and when it came time, they were just like, oh, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah. But but on a happier note, I mean, obviously things have happened. So let's talk about that space, the brick and mortar space. How did you go about getting that set up?
Well, I was trying to save up as much money as I could. I started like amping up the pop-ups.
Okay.
Because when I first started doing the pop-ups, it was every like once a month, once every month and a half. It wasn't very often, but then like, I saw like, this is something where I have to go. Because also, I left I left my last company.
Okay.
Under bad circumstances. And so I also have now aged out of basically everything I can do in the design world. So if I'm not a native Japanese speaker, basically I can't be an art director, creative director, or anything like that. Getting into ad agencies, they're like, well, if you don't have ad agency experience, we can't hire you. It's like, I have graphic design experience in almost every single type of every single type of genre of advertising that would be under an ad agency. It's just I never technically worked at an ad agency. And so, and the thing is, as a senior designer, a lot of these positions are like, they max you out at age 35.
Really?
And some of these listings say up to age 35.
Really?
Like it's agent. Yes.
Wow.
And I've had interviews, and they're like, I had multiple interviews for companies, and they're like, we like you, like if it's not the language, there's three things. There's language, design style, and age. And so one of the three always was
the age
a
one
problem.
is the one that I'm shaking my head at. Wow, I had no idea. Because I mean, obviously, language. Okay, that makes sense. Like if I could get it if you couldn't communicate with your colleagues. Okay, that's one thing. And of course, experience is always, no matter what profession you're in, experience is something. But the age, wow, and 35. Oh my God, I was still a baby at 35.
Yeah. I'm turning 45. So I'm super aged out of so many things. Like one company, I had 3 interviews with them, and they said at the end, it's like, we like you, but the thing is, like the majority of the people who work here are in their 20s, and we think that maybe your age, it might be difficult for you to be able to communicate well with them. And I'm like, huh? This is for a senior designer position. You need someone who has the age and experience.
Yeah, right.
That, help the younger people in development. So what are you talking about? So like I said, it's always been one of the 3. There was one where it's like, the for the language is fine, the age is fine, but like your design style doesn't match what we're looking for the, this position. But I'm like, a designer is supposed to be able to, we adapt to anything you want. But that was their excuse. Wow. So since I had aged out of all that, I was like, okay, let me pursue this cookie thing. And so that's when I started to amp up the pop-ups, and also the previous company I worked for, that foreign company. It was a really good salary. And so that was the first time that I really put away a lot of money.
Okay.
I lived pretty frugally.
Yeah, frugally.
Can't say it. Frugally?
frugally.
I'm very frugal.
Yeah.
Or catchy. I'm very,
I'm pretty frugal too.
Don't like, because I learned my lesson from when I was 18, and I ruined my credit by getting all these credit cards in America. because they just hand them out like free Disney passes or something.
Yeah.
So I screwed credit when I was young, so I learned from that, and so I learned to live within my means of the money I had.
Yeah.
And so since for a long time I had lived with a low rent, and I didn't really buy many clothes or go out, and I wasn't like out partying like when I was young, so I'm not going out and waste a lot of money like drinking. So I was able to have a big chunk sitting in my bank account.
Okay.
And so basically almost all of that, all of my savings, plus all the money that I raised through these pop-ups, plus a little bit from the crowdfunding. And I had two people here in Japan give me sanju goman and each.
Oh, okay.
So about $7,000. Two people. They helped me out with that. And so far in the business, I've sunk in about 6.5 million yen, like
Okay.
65,000. So, but the thing is, right now, the only actual debt is on my credit card, which is about $9,000. And then the two people that I borrowed that money from, which they said there's no rush to give it back. So I don't have this huge like loan, like
okay, yeah,
wave, over me. So basically, everything was pretty much out of pocket.
Okay.
So we start doing well. It's not having to go back to paying loans, just paying the one credit card bill, and then eventually the two people who lent me that money.
Okay, yeah. So now the shop is basically good to go, isn't it?
It's pretty much good to go. We got the cabinets finally installed last Thursday. And last Tuesday we had the fire department inspection.
Okay.
And then the week before that was the hygiene inspection. So we got the license for the to go ahead and start baking there.
Fantastic.
So pretty much the majority of the inside is complete. Now there's actually a back outdoor space that is actually bigger than my actual shop.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So my shop is 16 square meters, and there's this dead space in the back area of there that the owner said I can do whatever I want with it, because the building was a house.
Okay,
and the first floor was the traditional where they traditionally had a shop.
Okay.
On the first floor, on the old traditional houses. But this building is also with a side street, so there's access to the side of the building compared to most shops, most buildings where it's just accesses through the front.
Okay.
And so the back space that I'm talking about was this kind of like dead space that is between multiple buildings, and actually that's where it housed the old outdoor bathtub. The ofuro was out there.
Okay, yeah.
Because this building was from like probably the mid Showa era.
Okay.
Probably 1960s maybe. And so they created a bath, and it was out there, and the tiles, like the part of the bath still exists out there, and it's this long narrow space though.
Okay.
And there's actually this momiji tree out there, very very old tree.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so it's out there. It's they did cut off all the big branches because they were renovating the entire building.
Okay.
Because the owner, this was his family's home, and his parents have now since passed, and so the housing part was left unused for probably close to 2 years, and so they decided to renovate the whole building, and they partitioned part of the house into kind of shop spaces.
Okay.
And the location I got was actually the old garage. And then with that dead space in the back, that dead space in the back, the only access is through my shop.
All right.
And so now I need to make a little bit more money, so I can kind of like make the back look nice and pretty. We need to build a deck out there and some benches and everything, and a kind of like a covering.
Okay. That's what I was wondering, if you were going to be turning that into a spot where people could sit down with those cookies and those delicious cookies and munch away and have a coffee or something and relax. Nice.
Yeah, definitely. Originally, I was just going to use that shop and as basically the kitchen, and just sell everything from like a window.
Yeah.
But then when I found how big the space in the back was, I was like, oh, I have to take advantage of that. When I first saw it, everything was under construction, and in that space was all the construction junk. So I didn't realize how big the space was. I thought it was just this kind of like little, like maybe 4 by 8 feet space. I thought it wasn't very big, until I went back and looked at the pictures that I took, and I zoomed in. I'm like, oh wait, this keeps going back, because it was obscured by the construction garbage.
Okay.
And when I looked at the paper that showed the diagram for the location and like the cost of it, it said 16 square meters inside, and then it showed like this little rectangle that said 25 square meters, and I didn't realize that there was this like slash, meaning that this is extended. I was like, oh,
okay.
Damn, that's a really big space. So then I had to rethink that space, and basically I had to make this kind of small corridor on the side, and cut away from my actual kitchen space. So I had to kind of like give up kitchen space to then be able to utilize the back, so it can become a like a cafe, outdoor cafe space.
Yeah, neat. Cool. So now you had your, I guess, pre-opening or soft opening just this past weekend. How did that go?
It went really good. So I just did a simple promotion online. I didn't really push heavy advertising on it, because basically we needed to figure out how this whole system works with, when somebody's going to order, and then us getting the cookies and packing them. Because previously we had to pre-package everything.
Yeah.
Because, it was a pop-up, and due to the, sanitation laws, since I didn't make it there, it has to be packaged. But now, since it's an actual shop, I don't have to package it. We just, bake it, put it in the showcase, and then when people choose what they want,
put it in the bag.
Then we'll put it in like a little paper sleeve, and then we put it in the bag. But we still had to figure out, how's the best way, for doing that. So, and, taking the order, taking the money, packaging, and then giving it to them. So this is like kind of, we're doing our dry runs and seeing how to get it done. And like I said, I didn't promote it too much, but we ended up selling about 250 cookies that day. So I had made about 200 before, and then we were selling pretty quickly. And so I whipped up a few of the types of cookies that didn't need so much cooling time.
Okay.
Because some of them need like, a lot more cooling time because of the chocolate needs to set. And then I don't know if you noticed, a lot of my cookies have like extra decoration on them.
Yeah.
And so like those type of glazes need hours to dry.
Okay, gotcha.
Because, if I just put the glaze on there and then I just put it in the bag, it's going to smear the glaze. So, I was able to whip up some more of some cookies that didn't need that much cooling time. And, we sold out by around 4 p.m. So we started at 12. And so by 4, we pretty much had sold out of about 250 cookies.
Wow. Cool. Wonderful. Fantastic. And now you've got one more coming up, right? One more pre-open.
Yeah. Last week was just Saturday. This week will be a Saturday.
So it'll be Saturday and Sunday this week. 2 days. Wow. Cool. Yeah. And then the grand opening is on the 20th, right?
It's planned right now to be on the 20th because everything have been moved in there. We should have our system put in place. Hopefully, everything goes smoothly. I still have to do some testing because, I'm offering brownies and muffins, but the oven that I have bakes at a completely different way. Because before I was using the small microwave convection ovens.
Okay.
And the temperature and time compared to the big, now this really big professional oven, convection, like super convection oven, cooks it way faster.
Okay. So you've got some experimenting to do with the oven and just kind of getting that right, huh?
Yeah. So right now I got the cookies down, but now I have to figure out for the brownies.
Okay.
The brownies and the muffins. So next week is going to be my testing of that.
Okay.
So you don't want to overcook the brownies. You don't want this rock of a brownie. So I have to figure out which is going to be the best temperature for that. Temperature and time. The same thing goes for the muffins. Originally, I was going to do more scones, but in Japan, the price of butter it's really going up.
Okay.
Like in the last year, it's gone up over 200 yen. For a block of 450 gram block of butter.
Okay.
Compared to I had I buy these 10 kilo bags of flour, and it went up 200 yen. 10 kilos, 200 yen. 450 grams, 200 yen. That's a huge jump in. And if you want to have a nice flaky scone, you got to have enough butter in there.
Yeah, it's a lot of butter.
So I decided to axe doing scones right now and do muffins because muffins rely more on milk, sour cream, or yogurt and oil compared to having butter.
Yeah. Oh.
So that's how muffins usually are. So, milk and oil is way cheaper than butter. So it's something I can add to our menu without having to have these high costs.
Okay. Yeah. So when the shop, when Monsta Sweets is open, is it going to be like a 5-day-a-week thing, a 6-day-a-week thing, 7-day-a-week thing? What is your kind of initial plan?
Well, as a business owner, you're going to end up working 24/7. But right now, it's going to be for customers. It's planned to be Wednesday through Sunday, 12 to 7 p.m.
Okay.
Because also it's not just going to be cookies. We're going to have coffee.
Okay.
So before we had teamed up with this shop that was located in Shibuya's Miyashita Koen at the rooftop. They kind of were working out of this little camper car.
Okay.
Coffee. It's Ojizo Coffee. And so they finished up with that location at the end of January. And we made an agreement that we're going to kind of combine forces. Because I don't want to deal with coffee at all, but I need coffee for this cafe.
Gotcha.
And so they want, they need a place. So we're teaming up, and so they're going to be providing the coffee. I'm trying to verify if they're going to set up this week to have it available at this pre-open, or if they're going to do it from the grand opening.
Okay.
Still waiting to hear back on whether or not it's going to happen this week. So we might have coffee from them this weekend.
Okay, cool. So, I don't want to keep you much longer. It's late where you are. And so how can people find... What's that?
I stay up really late doing things.
Oh, okay. You're now an entrepreneur. You're now a small business owner. I'm a primary school teacher, so I'm luckily on holiday now, but it's like 9 p.m. here, but normally on a school night I'm in bed at 9:30. But I have to be because it's the only way I can face the little ones without being a grumpy teacher. But yeah, so where can people find lots of pictures and videos and coolness of these delicious cookies online?
Okay, so pretty much all social media is that our name is at Monsta MONSTA_sweets.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all across from, it's the same handle for Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, technically YouTube, but we haven't utilized YouTube yet.
Okay.
So you can find everything under social medias at Monsta_sweets.
Yeah, and you guys want to go and follow. These cookies look so amazing. I was showing them to my kids at the dinner table tonight on Instagram. They were just like, my son is drooling. He's like, "Whoa, this looks so good, Dad." I'm like, I know they do. So,
And the thing is, people are not doing what I'm doing, like the decorations,
Yeah.
and all the visual aspects that I'm doing on this.
yeah,
Nobody's doing what I'm doing.
your cookies stand out, man. Like, I mean, I don't have a huge sweet tooth, but I'd put my lack of sweet tooth aside if I could have a chance to have one of your cookies. They do look amazing. There's a really, and I love the kind of seasonal stuff, Halloween, Christmas. You had so many different cool things happening with them.
Right, Sakura ones.
Yeah.
Right, I have Sakura on. I have Sakura on both chocolate chip, and I have Sakura flavored cheesecake.
Oh wow. Oh my goodness. I wish I was in Tokyo right now. Yeah.
They look like it, and I use sprinkles in a way to make it look like it's actual Sakura petals.
Nice. And since there are no actual real ones happening in Tokyo right now, it's good to have some on the cookies.
They're just starting. They're just really
starting.
late.
A little bit late, right? Or more than a little bit. Cool. So everyone go check the show notes below. Monsta Sweets. Just go follow on Instagram, on TikTok, wherever you're doing your social media stuff. Go follow, and I'll share those links out. And I'm going to put this episode out in just a couple of days, so it'll drop a few days before your second pre-open. And hopefully, if you guys, anyone out there is in Tokyo, head on over to Monsta Sweets and give it a try. Yeah, so thank you so much for taking the time to join us on the Just Japan podcast. And it's been great after all these years of watching you online and seeing getting to meet Atomic Boy X in person.
It's been a while since someone's actually said my name as Atomic Boy X.
Well, there you go. It's we're waxing nostalgic, but again, thank you so much, and best of luck. I hope you have great success this weekend coming up with your pre-open.
I hope so too. So, but yeah, I think we're gonna do, at least for now, we're gonna be doing good.
A big thank you to Gregorio for coming on the Just Japan podcast, and good luck with your big opening, your second pre-opening of Monsta Sweets this weekend, of course, and good luck on the grand opening that's coming later this month, April 20th. If you are in Tokyo, head down to Monsta Sweets and try out those amazing looking cookies. And if you're going to be heading to Tokyo in the future on holiday, check out Monsta Sweets. Of course, as Gregorio mentioned, you can follow Monsta Sweets all over social media, on Insta, on Facebook, on X, all over the place. Just check out Monsta Sweets. There will be links in the show notes, so go check those out. Also, head over to justjapanstuff.com. I've been making that website way more active again. Each episode is over there with show notes and links, so go to justjapanstuff.com. So a few more things I wanted to mention, of course. This is the first episode of the month of April. I am now creating the Just Japan podcast newsletter. It's a newsletter that goes out monthly to listeners like you. All you have to do is sign up. There will be a link below in the show notes. Go check that out. And there's also links over on justjapanstuff.com. Go check that out. There's things in there that you will not see anywhere else. Only in the newsletter. Okay. And we'll see how that goes. Already a few awesome people are signed up, and we'll get some more of you guys signed up, and we'll grow that neat community. All right, guys. Well, that does it for another episode of the Just Japan podcast. My name is Kevin O'Shea, a Canadian currently based in Penang, Malaysia, podcasting about Japan, the place where my heart is, where my wife is from, where my kids were born. I'm currently on spring break. So I'm in the middle of my spring break, which allows me to have a lot of time to kind of make more content and just kind of line the ducks up, so to speak, and kind of organize things more. And I'm having a lot of fun doing that. It's a staycation for me. I'm staying at home for the holiday, so I get to do that. So guys, that's it for another episode of the podcast. Of course, you can find me on Twitter at MadForMaple. You can find me on Instagram at Japan Night Scenes or JLandKev. I'm just all over the place. Blue Sky, Threads. One great place to go is to just head on over to justjapanstuff.com. Go over there. You can find all kinds of information about the newsletter, about the Patreon campaign. You can come on over and help us out over there. All that stuff is over at justjapanstuff.com. I'm also posting photos and starting to blog a bit more over there and make that website kind of pop and come to life again. There's also a great Facebook with a great Facebook community as well over at facebook.com/justjapanstuff. Check those links are all below. All right, guys. Well, that does it for another episode of the podcast. 216 is dusted and done. Go check out Monsta Sweets. Get your sweet tooth on. All right. Well, that's it, everyone. Hope you are having a great week wherever you are. Hope you're happy. Hope you're healthy. And I will be back with another episode really soon.